so many people are waiting for their pants to get started. You don't have to wait for your frickin' pants. You just have to go do it, right? The world doesn't care about your pants. The world doesn't care about your logo and your LLC or corporation to be formed or anything else, your brochure. What you need to do is you need to just go out and see if whatever it is that you're doing is going to actually work. Will people buy it? If people aren't going to buy it, then you don't need your pants, right?
E-Mark and A-Mark is on.
What?
E-Mark and A-Mark is on.
Who?
Tell your friends, tell your dog, tell your mom.
Say what?
E-Mark and A-Mark is on.
Oh, hey Mom, E-Mark and A-Mark is on.
Welcome back to another episode of E-Mark and A-Mark. We are here again at the Digital Agency Expo, this time not in our hotel room though. We are down in the basement of the Sheraton Hotel.
Wait a minute now, so you can say basement or you can say fancy ballroom.
That's right.
That sounds way better.
Well, I mean, we went
we
from
like creepy places.
yeah,
So.
we went from the
okay.
bedroom to the basement.
Right,
Yeah.
all right, I like it.
So who you hear there?
Sounds
in
like
the
some of my dates. No, never mind.
Super excited to have Roland Frasier here on the podcast today. Roland has built many super successful businesses, currently involved in over 36 companies, one of them which will do over $4 billion in revenue this year. So he's built a business or two over the years. And also, fun fact, has traveled to 153 countries and counting so
Indeed.
far.
Yes, trying
Roland,
to get
thank you
them
so
all.
much.
Thank
Yeah.
you
so
for
much
having me, guys.
joining us.
Yeah, as you guys heard, by all the things we just said, he's such an underachiever. Like, I don't know why we had him on this show. You just haven't done enough with your life, Roland, is the
Hey,
problem.
I'm working on it. I'm
My
trying.
God. Do you feel like you've reached success?
It depends on how you define success. I feel that I am successful. I have great relationships. I love what I do. I get up excited about every day. So to me, that is successful, and I think that I help people and impact other people's lives. So I feel good about that.
Yeah.
That's how I define it.
Yeah. And Roland, a little while ago before the show, I was talking to you. This show is about bringing on other entrepreneurs, other business owners, other motivated people that can provide perspective and just really life lessons and building their companies, and whether that's selling them and growing them, being in them, whatever that may look like. But oftentimes, as I was sharing with you, people look at people like yourself who are very successful, very accomplished, and props to you. We hope to reach that one day. But, with all that aside, people may look at you and think, what a lucky guy, and sometimes, luck maybe sometimes plays a factor in it, but
I think it always plays a factor.
absolutely. But at the end of the day, luck favors those who wants to work, right? And just goes out there and gets it done. So take us back before you were successful Roland Frasier. What was your upbringing like? Were your parents entrepreneurs? Did they work for corporate America? What made you who you are just in the beginning stages?
Like most children, my father worked for the Internal Revenue Service. And
The beloved IRS.
most
yeah,
children.
yeah. There's Santa Claus. There's the IRS. It's like it's something you aspire to. So my father started with nothing and worked for the Internal Revenue Service. Started at the lowest level, which was a revenue agent, which is the person that's knocking on people's doors and things like that. And then worked his way up, put himself through law school while he was doing that, and eventually went through all different levels of that and became an attorney for the government, practiced for several years. And then he did take the entrepreneurial journey when he leapt out onto his own and opened a practice. So that was my parents. And I grew up in a small town in Virginia. The population was 5,000 people. It was called Covington. And the biggest thing in that town was a paper mill where everybody worked. And then my father moved to the big city, which was Richmond, Virginia, because it had a population of like 200,000, I think, at the time. So,
Gosh.
yeah,
How many kids are in your family?
just me.
Just you?
Yeah.
And was that fun? Was that you didn't know any different, so it was just what it was?
It was great. I think it'd be cool to have siblings, but I think it was cool to be a solo too. So
Yeah. In school, were you one of those straight A's, or did you sometimes mess around in the DNF world?
I had a bit of a challenge with authority. I have had that most of my life, and so from time to time it was possible that I may have been in some sort of conflict with the powers that be and not received the A's. But I did also have several times when I did receive the A's when I was not in conflict with them.
Now, your friends, what were they like? Were they the manly type? Were they the nerds, the geeks, the jocks?
I had a really eclectic group of friends because I played music. So I played music from an early age and lots of different instruments. And so I was in and out of bands in high school. And when I was 15, I did my first paid gig out in a club. So my friends were the jocks and the nerds and the heads. We called them then. I don't know what they call them now. But and I sold alcohol out of the back of my car, and then I sold weed, and then I sold acid. And
when you sold weed, is that like grass and oak trees and things?
Yeah, no, yeah. It was before they had sativa and indica and all the other things, right? But
and this is when you were 15 years old?
I was 16 at that point because I needed
16.
to pay for my car and stuff. So and the band gig didn't pay as much as I wanted it to. But
what kind of band was
so
this?
I was an entrepreneur of all different sorts.
There it is.
Yeah.
So when did you make the transition from drugs to more of the normal type of businesses?
Probably.
Or are you still a drug dealer?
That was probably 18. Some people think so. No, that was probably 18. But that was kid stuff. It was basically how do you pay for your play? So that was a way to do that. But I realized pretty quickly that like as you see what happens in that world that it never really ends well. So it's better not to be a player.
What helped you get out of that apart? Was it just seeing what the end result could be and knowing I'm better than this and this is not me, or did your
it was
kick you in the rear every now and then?
No, I got my kick in later, but it was just it was something that I think it seemed like at the time in the zeitgeist of the time that was something that people did. And so it was just, we would trade, like the way that I would buy it was not with money. I'd trade 100 records and get a pound of weed and then sell that, and then that would make money to buy more records. So I was motivated by more kiddly things than anything else.
Now, were these empty records or were they?
No, they were
actual
albums, like LPs.
Wow,
Yeah.
that was a thing.
Yeah.
What would that be compared to nowadays? Would that be like?
Gosh, they'd be worth so much money now.
Yeah.
I should have just kept them and skipped the whole other part, right? It was just a longer game than I wanted to play.
Yeah. So, was there anyone who had a particular impact in your life, which kind of started you on your entrepreneurship and journey route?
Yeah, definitely. My father was a tax attorney when he went from the dark side to the good side, and he all of his clients were entrepreneurs, and so they were all people who were successful enough that they had tax challenges, and so he represented business owners who had tax challenges with the Internal Revenue Service. So that was a pretty broad array of people, and I got to see all the different cool ways that people made money, and I thought it was really awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. So you definitely had the inspiration of your dad there to kind of help you, guide you.
Yeah.
And absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I bet he's very proud of you today.
Yeah, I think I'm hoping so. That's good. He's still practicing law. So.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah.
What kind of law does he practice?
Tax.
Still tax.
Yeah,
Okay.
still tax.
Very good.
He
very
just
good.
loves it.
Yeah.
So you're 18 years old. You're now out of the drug game. Imagine you're graduating high school.
Yes.
Do you go off to college, or did you go straight into entrepreneurship and keep growing businesses?
I did both. I did go. When I was 18, I was still in high school. I got my real estate license as soon as I turned 18 and started selling real estate. And then I realized that was a lot of work. And so if I went to if I could find somebody that had a lot of properties to sell, then I'd be able to do that and make a lot more money a lot faster. So I went to developers and said, I'd like to help sell because you guys have lots of houses and I only have to talk to you one time. And so I started doing that, and then eventually learned kind of how that business worked. I graduated and went to college, got a degree in accounting. While I was in school for that, I was playing music at nights and clubs, and then I was in my off time, I was selling real estate, and ultimately, then I talked to the developers, and I said, "How do you guys do this?" And they said, we do these things called syndications. And I said, what's a syndication? They said, well, we raise money from a bunch of people, and then we take a part of the profits and give them a part of the profits. And I said, that's cool. And I found out they had to have this stuff called Keyman insurance. And so I said, so insurance, that means you're paying somebody to buy insurance. Why don't I get my license and sell it to you? So I did that. And then I said, so to do these syndication things and raise money, what do you have to do that? And they said, we have to have a securities license. So I went and got my securities license. So I was 18 with real estate, 19 with insurance, 20 with securities. And then I started putting together syndications to raise money for developers to develop properties. So I did several thousand homes over the course of a couple of years.
That's incredible. So I just have to pause for a second, take a step back, and imagine you're 18 years old approaching these developers, and you're like, hey, I want to sell all these units. They're just like, yeah, cool, kid, go ahead. They're like, this 18-year-old kid absolutely has very little experience, just let you go ahead and do it? Or was there some selling and convincing?
It is, but it's amazing what enthusiasm and a lack of knowledge that you can't do this or shouldn't be able to do this will get you.
Yeah. So you were what I'd like to call ignorance on fire,
yes,
right?
Yes. To this very day. Yeah.
Seems to work well for you. It seems like people can really learn a lot from you, right?
It is okay.
Do you think people get stuck on, I find that a lot of people who want to start businesses, they want to wait until the perfect opportunity comes, until they have, you're already laughing because you know where I'm going with this. They think they need to have created the business already. Like, it needs to be perfect. They know the ins and outs of it already before it even launches. And they get so bogged down by the details, they don't even start, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that's is that something you see as well?
I do. I was laughing because my other son, I told you about one of them, my other son got upset with me because last year I wrote a post on Instagram called "Waiting for Your Pants." Are you waiting for your pants? And it was because I had a conversation with him one morning. He said, "I'm going to do this thing." I was like, "You know, it's time for you to get out on your own and make a living." And he said, "Okay." And he picked what he was going to do, and it was this. It was to get a job at a car dealership, because I was like, "You're really good with people, and you love cars. That's a perfect thing for you." He's like, "Cool." And so I said, "Hey, how'd it go? Did you go out and start approaching people?" And he's like, "No, not yet." And I said, "Why not?" And he said, "Well, because I'm waiting for my pants." I was like, "Okay, can maybe give me a little more detail on that?" He's like, "Yeah, I mean, I have to look right when I go out, so I went out and got some pants, and I'm waiting for them to get hemmed so that I can wear them to the interviews." And I said, "So you're waiting for your pants?" "Yes." "Okay." So I wrote that post, which he just got so mad at me, and I hope he listens to this. Because I'm a good parent, right? So, yeah. So I said in that, and I'll say it again here, is to me, so many people are waiting for their pants to get started. You don't have to wait for your frickin' pants. You just have to go do it, right? The world doesn't care about your pants. The world doesn't care about your logo and your LLC or corporation to be formed or anything else, your brochure. Mm-hmm. What you need to do is you need to just go out and see if whatever it is that you're doing is going to actually work. Will people buy it? If people aren't going to buy it, then you don't need your pants, right?
Yeah. So, Roland, I think you're a perfect person to ask this question to, for someone who's built such successful companies. If somebody has an idea right now, regardless what it is, what's the 1, 2, 3 punch you'd give them how to get started?
I think the very first thing would be, before you do anything, just try to sell it. See if it sells. If there's no market for it, then it doesn't make sense to take any time to do anything with it, right? So that's the very first thing. Whatever your idea is, it is only an idea until someone will pay money for it.
Right. So whether it's an idea or service, go start selling it is one. What's number 2?
Yeah, and sell it before you have it. So let's say, for example, your idea is, I want to have an amazing app, right? So if you want to have an app, then the first thing most people do is they say, well, okay, I need to get a programmer, and I'm going to need to raise some money to do that, I guess, or borrow it from my... No, just see if anybody will buy it, right? See if somebody will buy it. Run some Google ads, see if people will buy it. That is the most important thing. If you can't sell it before you have it, then it ain't no good. And I think doing things that won't scale first make a lot of sense. The guy that started Zappos first took pictures of shoes that he bought in a retail store and then posted them online to see if anyone would buy it. And he sold them at a loss. He sold them at a loss to see if people would actually do it. So he was literally going to the shoe store and paying retail and then taking pictures of the shoes and putting them online and selling them at a low price and selling them at a loss and sending them out to see if it would work. Turns out it did. Built an okay business doing that.
Yeah.
It's doing things that won't scale first. So whatever you're doing, take the constraint that's stopping you from moving forward today to actually see if there's a commercial market for it and eliminate that, whatever it takes.
Yeah. So go and sell it would be number one, see if it works. Number two, number three, what would be that last step you'd give them?
Well, I mean, to me, that's just it. Then you figure out how do you make it actually work, right? That you don't have to worry about the economics to start with. You solve that at the end because you can always solve for the economics.
Now, what would your response be to somebody who says, Roland, this sounds great, but my idea, it's the best idea. It's going to be like the Uber of my industry, and I don't want to just start putting it out there. What if you were to come along and take it? So I need to get intellectual property. I need to, get a patent on this. So there's no way. I mean, what you say sounds nice, but there's no way I can just put it out there.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, I bet, would say that.
It's a great question and a very common thing that people say and do. So the legal answer, if you're practicing law, is you should go protect that. You should register it. You should get your patent, your copyrights, and all that kind of stuff done. I think the business answer is that what I have seen, because I did several infomercials, and what you find in the infomercial business is that whenever you have something successful, there will be 5 knockoffs that are out there in the market almost instantaneously. There are people who have lots of money and who do nothing but knock off great ideas and great inventions, right? So that's going to happen whether you have it or not.
Yep.
So to spend the money and wait the time means less time for you to get market share. So my advice to people was when they came to me when I was practicing law, I said, look, the legal advice is you got to get all this protection. But the business advice is whatever protection you have, market share is your best defense. So go get market share first. That's the best protection you can get for your intellectual property.
Yeah. So now, is what you just said something you've learned throughout the years, or is this something you've actually put into practice in building the companies you currently have?
I learned it the hard way, and that's why I do it the way that I do it now.
Yeah, the smart way.
Market share. Market share wins. Whoever gets the most market share first, that's who wins the game. Yeah.
So over the years, you've built dozens upon dozens of companies, it sounds like, or at least been involved with them. Have they all been successful?
No.
No.
Oh God, no.
Let's go down that path.
Out of the successes, I mean, how many failures would you say there've been to each success?
I try to learn from failure, but not count it. So I couldn't tell you. I'd have to actually go back and try to think about it. But most of the businesses, it depends on how you define business too. But most of the things that you think will work don't, I think, because they have to be changed. So the initial version of almost everything doesn't work, but then you pivot and you change and you get product market fit and you iterate, and that's how you get to a successful business. So part of it is just persistence. Persistence in the wake of failure solves a whole lot of things, as long as it's pivoted persistence and not blind insistence, right?
And how do you know the difference? I mean, I know we talk to entrepreneurs all the time that are thinking, if I just do this one thing, or I just need a little bit more money, I'll take out another credit card just so I can make payroll, because we're gonna hit it. We're gonna figure it out.
Yeah, just hold on a little longer.
Hold on a little bit longer, and it's gonna be a big success.
Yeah.
How do you know, or what advice do you have as to when it is time to just kill it?
Yeah,
it's just a failure.
I think you have to, if you're thinking about business in a business-like way, then you have a certain amount of runway that you're willing to give to something. And if you don't see progress towards the end goal within a certain period of time, then it's time to cut and run. There's a really great book on this called Necessary Endings that I would recommend that everybody read. And it's all about, it's that person that you've had working for you for 2 years that you didn't want to fire because magically you think maybe next week she'll be better, right? It's the idea that you've poured all that money into, and it's like, well, if I just get a mortgage on my house, I can have 6 more months to do it. It's time for an ending. And if we just take stock in that and say, I've got this budget for this thing, it's either going to work or it's not. It is a runway. At the end of the runway is a brick wall. And it either stops at that point, or I have to make a decision. Has there been enough progress, and do I see an end in sight that will get me to where I want or not? If I don't, I got to stop it. But the other caveat to that would be to say, or the corollary would be to say, that the other option is to pivot. So it doesn't have to hit an end if you can pivot, but if you haven't had success and you've run out of budget, then it's time to pivot. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It does. It does make a lot of sense.
absolutely.
Yeah, I'd be interested to get your perspective on investment for companies. I mean, it seems like venture capital and all sorts of having an investor is the sexy thing to do nowadays. You know, I have this big investor. Is that what companies should look to do? Is find an investor that has the knowledge, has the finances to help them skyrocket their business, or is there a different way?
I love that question. I just talked to somebody about it in our War Room Mastermind this morning who said, should I get capital to do this? And I said, well, first, you have to understand that investment in the terms that you're talking about is equity, and equity is the most expensive funding that you'll ever get in your life because it will dilute your ownership, and ultimately it can result in you being ousted from your company, as several famous people have been done, right, including Steve Jobs.
Yep.
So I'm not a fan of equity or raising capital just for raising capital's sake, and I think a lot of people hear stories about venture capital and think that that's a really great way to go, but to me, what I've seen is that the companies that bootstrap initially are the ones that seem to do the best because they're forced to innovate. So capital stifles innovation because it allows mediocrity to continue. So it's, to me...
Ooh, say that again. Capital what?
I never listen to myself.
Capital
stifles innovation and creativity.
Oh, that's good.
Right?
That's good.
It promotes mediocrity.
Yeah.
It really does. So one of my friends who's a big venture investor has a thing that he said, when I go in to look at a company that says they want funding, if I see brand new iMacs or Macintoshes or whatever all over the desks, and there's a really cool foosball machine and a cereal bar and all this other stuff, then I'm not going to invest, because those people are not using my money. They're not going to use my money to build the business. They're going to use my money to build this cool environment, but they're not focused on the product. If I go in and I see there's mismatched monitors and a beat up hard drive here and all that kind of stuff, then I know that they're scrappy and they're bootstrapping, and I'll invest in that company. And I thought that was really insightful, because I can tell you from personal experience, every time that I have funded a company with the money that they ask for and I thought it was too much, it all got pissed away. I mean, it's so easy. It's not even malicious. It's just, when you don't have to be scrappy, then you're going to be wasteful.
Mm-hmm. Playing the devil's advocate here, what are you going to say to people who say, well, Roland, we want to create a company culture that people want to come to. So, of course, we want to have the foosball tables and the bean bags, because we have to cater to this generation that wants this stuff. If we can't get them to show up to work, who cares what the product is? They're not even going to be focused on making it.
Yeah.
Relevant argument. What would you say to that?
Yeah, it's just an argument. It's a valid argument that is out of sequence. The first thing that you have to have is a company before you can have a culture, right? I think. So to me, you have an idea. You have to see that the idea is going to work, and you have to start making money. So focus on making money. And then you have the luxury of building a culture around a business that actually works. If you build the culture first and the business doesn't work, all you did was waste money.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I totally agree with you.
Yeah, so you don't even have to have that argument. It's just, hey, you're absolutely right. Let's just have something that's actually going to make money first.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you think has been like the number one? What's been the number one thing that's been responsible for your success?
Persistence.
Yeah,
I'm too stupid.
Take us down that road.
Yeah, I will go forward and go farther than most people will go to be sure that, number one, I'm positioned initially to have something that works, and then if it doesn't, I will let it go, but I will also go farther than most people will to make things work. You know, so and that's why I like pivots. I think pivots are really important, and most successful companies have come from a lot of pivots, right? That most of the companies that you see didn't start exactly as the company that you see.
Yeah.
So
would you say there's a difference between being stubborn and being persistent, and what is
I think they're very closely related. I think stubborn is when persistence doesn't lead to success. Seriously, like, I think you have to be, to some extent, obnoxiously stubborn, and I like the reality distortion field that they said that Steve Jobs had. I think that a lot of successful entrepreneurs share that, right? That you just, it's like, that's not an acceptable situation. My reality is different, and you bend the world to match that reality. Now, you're not actually bending the world, you're usually bending yourself to fit the reality that exists, and that's what's really happening. But I think that's what makes all the difference.
Yeah. So if you could strip away every company type of culture, every employee handbook, rule book, every principle there is out there, and only operate your company on one principle, what is it?
I really like, it's something that my partner Ryan Dice took from someone who was, I think, a screenwriter, and it's called the character diamond. And if you can identify what is the North Star of your company, what's the underlying thing that everything is based on, and that's at the top of the diamond, and then down at the bottom of the diamond is the counterpoint to that. On the right is the hill that you're willing to die on, and on the left is a little weakness, not a fatal flaw, but a weakness. Then that's something that gives you, that's the foundation of the culture of all of our companies, and it leads to all of the other things that build a culture, like figuring out what are your corporate values and what are your we believes and that sort of thing.
Yeah. We watch your video on Digital Marketer, the we believes, and there's 42 of them out there.
Right.
And great video. I mean, wonderfully made. Was that? I'm gonna assume you guys don't do things accidentally. That was very intentional. Am I correct?
That was intentional. We do lots of things accidentally. We bumble into success all the time, but we're smart enough to recognize it when we have the good fortune to do that, which is why I do think luck plays a lot in it. And I think anybody who's successful who says luck didn't play a part is crazy. But I do agree with you. I think that that when opportunity meets preparedness, then you have luck. You're creating it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the last thing I'd like to touch on is something you mentioned. You're a partner with Ryan Dice, and you've done a lot of partnerships, I imagine, over the years. What sort of advice do you have for people thinking about partnerships? I know, as Dave Ramsey says, the only ship that doesn't sail is a partnership. There's people out there that says never do a partnership. It's only going to lead to failure.
Yeah.
How have you made it work?
Well, it's a personality thing. So there are partnership people and there are not partnership people. And I have good friends that are not partnership people, and I know that I've actually partnered with them and it didn't work out. Not in a horrible way, but just they're just not partner people. They don't want to share any, they don't want to share the money usually. They don't want to share responsibility. They want to be in total control. They don't want to have to develop consensus on things. And that's fine. For me, though, I've been able to do so much more because I'm not a controlling shareholder in most things, and there's no business that I own that I don't have partners in, because I don't like to do everything that has to do with business, right? And I think that there's a big advantage in having people who have a vested interest in the success of the company in an equity ownership kind of way. And so I like to partner with other people who do that. Ryan's a great example. Ryan, no matter what he says, loves to talk and be on stage, right? I think it's cool, but I don't want to record videos all day. I don't want to do webinars or show up. I'd rather shoot myself, right? So I'm good at the deals. He's good at that front person, face of the company, spokesperson, CEO kind of thing, and that's great. And he likes ops. I don't like ops. I like strategy, right? I like partnerships. So that's I think what makes our partnership work. Excuse me. And then Richard Lindner, who is the other person in our business, loves marketing strategy and in particular and running the day to day. So you can have a so much happier life if you are partnered with people who like to do the things that you don't like to do, because there are people who like to do the things you don't like to do, and they're going to be better at it, and you're just going to self-sabotage yourself out of the things that require more of the things of you that you don't like doing if you don't have somebody else doing that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'm finding more of a trend in what you just said, because so Alex and I were, business partners, and as you're describing the correlation between you and your business partner, it's me and him. I'm very much the Ryan Dice, and he's very much you.
Yeah.
So do
and it works, right?
Do you see that consistently across the board, or do you think there's two other characteristics that could be a better match for business partners?
Well, I think that's the first thing, is that if you're good at the same thing, if your strengths are the same, then you'll have conflict, because you'll have different approaches to applying the strengths. If your strengths are complementary, then you'll each have your own domain that you're doing things in. You'll own whatever the front part is, and you'll own whatever the back part is. And so as long as you respect each other with that, that's not going to generally create a problem. And as a recovering attorney, the people that I see...
How long have you been sober now?
The people that I saw focused, the people that I saw who didn't work out as partners had that in common. The other thing is that makes a good partnership is an understanding. And what you learn as an attorney is that two people can be part of a situation. They can watch something happen and have completely different memories of it. Not that they saw wrong. They actually have a memory that this thing happened this way, and it didn't. Because how could two people watch the exact same car accident or whatever, and one remembers that they stopped at the light and one remembers that they ran the light? Yeah. It's because there's an actual memory that's created. And I did research on this, and it's just like, it turns out they're false memories, because we don't have any idea what reality really is. We only have our observation and interpretation of it based on the limitations, constraints, history, understandings that we have to start with. So in a partnership, you guys may have had a conversation. Do you have a written partnership agreement?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So if you go and say, hey, let's go into business together, it's going to be awesome. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Let's do it. But you might think that he should work 40 hours a week, 9 to 5 every single day, no matter what. And he might think, dude, I got nothing to do. I'm going to surf today because I'm waiting to hear back on the 4 proposals that I sent out. That's a big fundamental difference in understanding. So going through and having a good attorney draft a good partnership agreement that has all of the things about what are the expectations going in, that you're literally getting on the same page in a document. Now, you put the document away, hopefully, and you never look at it again. But if you start surfing, then you're going to say, oh, yeah, no, it said that, all we have to do is be sure that we have a budget and we hit our KPIs. And if we do that, then I don't care if you want to surf. Right. Or you might say, no, by God, you said you were going to be there 40 hours a week. I've seen this, right? Yeah. That's an actual scenario. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the thing, is that is have complementary skills, have a written understanding of what you're going to do so that you're on the same page, and then have a deep respect for the people, because if you don't respect them and like them, it is very likely that you will end up not working out.
Yeah, the last question we like to ask our guests on this show is the aspect of school, college versus just true grit, going, getting it, working hard, becoming somebody. Most millionaires didn't even finish high school, much less even go to college, right?
Is that a statistic that you know to be true? Most millionaires didn't finish?
I think the way...
I'm sorry, it's the attorney in me. I can't... Isn't it true that most millionaires did? No.
I think it was 85% of people who are self-made are millionaires didn't finish high school, I believe was the last statistic I heard.
It's college, not high school.
I want to say, okay.
Anyways.
Regardless.
See how I am?
all this coming down to this question, how important do you think going to school versus just going out there pursuing your dream is? I mean, knowing what you know, would you have still gone to college, gone that route, or would you have just started doing what you wanted to do?
For me, Yes, I would have gone because I did both. I worked and started businesses while I went to school. I had an entrepreneurial job, and went to school. Okay, so I would say both because I use my school every single day. I use the accounting that I learned every single day. I use the law that I learned every single day, and it has made me tens of millions of dollars even in single deals because I knew things the other side didn't know. I know how financial statements work. I know how the securities laws work, right? I know taxes. And so if you've got somebody that knows all that and you're at the negotiating table, and you have a high school, you haven't finished high school or you haven't finished college, didn't have that knowledge, and you don't have a representative that did, then you brought a knife to a gunfight, right? Yeah. So I think that for me, I would not want to be without the skills and knowledge that I got through that. Now, my answer as to the importance of it is that it depends. If you are a person who self-educates, then I think the system is horribly outdated and designed around a specific type of learning personality that doesn't really exist anymore, particularly in the digital native state, right? For people that have grown up with the internet and with devices and things like that, and in a connected world, then I think that all of the information is available to you. And so if you have the discipline to learn it on your own, then you're going to be way better off to start and learn it on your own. I don't think that it is important to have. I didn't insist that my kids do it. I have one kid that didn't finish high school and got a GED ultimately. He decided he wanted to go back and do that. And the other one finished but didn't finish college. He dropped out of college 3 credits short of a degree in finance, and because he had an opportunity. And so I encouraged them both to do what they wanted. To me, I say what I told them and what I would tell anybody is, look, there's some benefits that you get that are not financial by going through school. You get the feeling of satisfaction of having completed something. You have an expanded social circle that has contacts that you might not have met. You have prolonged your entry into the workforce so that you get to have a little bit better understanding of what might fascinate you and be interesting, and you will pick up knowledge that you will use, right? So that's all good stuff. And particularly if you have a desire to be in certain professions, if you desire to be in management of a company, or if you desire to be an attorney or doctor or something like that, you kind of have to get it to do those things. And to progress in traditional companies, a degree is very frequently a requirement. So to me, the most options that you will get will be if you go through a course of study and do that. But on the entrepreneurial side, I think that to find something that you want to do and pursue that, my son that didn't finish high school dropped out because he was ranked in the top, I think it was 100 players in the world in CSGO. And there are teams, there are video game teams and houses and allowances from people who own teams that will pay people who are 16, 17 years old, $5-6 grand a month just to play games professionally.
What a life.
I was like,
that's awesome.
But you know what? He did that. And then he was like, this sucks. This is like work, right? It's not as much fun.
It's not just playing video games at home.
Yeah. So I don't think it matters as long as you self-educate, because I'll tell you that I will bet you that most of those super successful millionaire type folks that didn't do that did either self-educate or surround themselves with people who were. The problem is if you surround yourselves with people who are and you're relying on them, then frequently you'll end up like many athletes and movie stars do, who have people who embezzled money, stole from them because they weren't sophisticated enough to know how to judge the performance of the professional advisors that they had. So then that leaves you with the ones that actually are able to keep the money, who I think mostly you will find are very, very savvy and smart and did a lot of learning outside of college. They might not have gone to school for 40 hours a week for X number of years and read textbooks, but they watched YouTube videos on how to read financial statements and, and educated themselves and went to trade shows and seminars and events like the one we're at now and that kind of thing. So that's a really long answer, but I think it's super important. And I don't think it ultimately matters whether you go or not. I think it matters whether you are willing to have the discipline to educate yourself about the things that are going to be important.
So if somebody, and this is the last question here, if somebody approached you and said, I want you to invest in my business, what's the first thing you're going to say to them?
Well, it would depend. If it was a startup, I would say no, because I don't invest in startups. I think they're too hard. The failure rate is too high, and I would rather invest in momentum and people. So I start with a business that's already successful. For me, I'm a growth capital guy. I'm not a venture guy. So I'm looking for somebody that's got momentum that I can see. And then I'm going to look at the person and say, is this the kind of person who I believe has what it takes to make it successful? Do they have a track record of success? Do they come highly recommended? That's going to be the first process. Then I go through PFM. That's the P, people. Then I go F, is it going to be fun? If it's not going to be fun, I'm not interested because I don't need more money. I just want to have fun. And then, does it make money? If it's good people and I can have fun and I can make money, then I'm going to go to a financial analysis and do my due diligence.
That's good. That's good.
Very cool. Well, Roland, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah,
Before we sign off, where can everybody find you online?
I am on all the socials at Roland Frasier, RolandFrasier. I have a podcast like you guys do. It's called Business Lunch. It's also everywhere. And if you are interested in the companies, digitalmarketer.com is probably the best place to check that out.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Good having you on, Roland.
Thanks for having me.